Okay, so picture this. You're in a remote village, and you need a specialist diagnosis.
Right.
But instead of traveling for days, you get it instantly, like ordering takeout.
Yeah, it almost sounds too good to be true.
Right. Well, that's the future the Pathology Network, or TPN as they call themselves, is aiming for.
Hmm.
And we're going deep on their draft policy document, kind of like their blueprint for a global network of pathologists all connected through their software, Spec 360.
What I find really interesting here is that TPN is tackling this huge issue, a severe shortage of pathologists.
Especially in developing countries, right?
Yeah, the stats are pretty shocking.
Oh, absolutely. In some parts of Africa, it's like one pathologist for every million people.
And in developed countries, it's one for every, like, 20,000?
Yeah, it's a massive difference. I mean, what kind of real-world consequences does that have?
Well, I mean, you can imagine. Delayed diagnoses, for one thing,
Right, right.
and probably more misdiagnoses, and ultimately it means compromised patient care. And then there's the brain drain, too. A lot of African pathologists end up going elsewhere for better opportunities, which just makes the problem even worse.
It's a vicious cycle. So how is TPN addressing this?
Okay, so imagine this. A pathologist in Kenya, let's say, they're using the SPECS 360 system.
Right.
They can analyze biopsies from multiple clinics all across the country.
Without having to travel constantly.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's something really tricky, the software can instantly connect them with a specialist somewhere else, like London or New York, even.
Oh, wow. So it's bringing world-class expertise to, like, even the most remote places.
That's the whole idea. It's not just about, like, bridging distances. It's about making sure that everyone, no matter where they are, has access to the best possible diagnoses.
I'm starting to see the potential here.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've got this technology, this vision, but how does a pathologist actually get involved with TPN?
Well, they have these different levels of engagement, you could say.
Okay, I saw that mentioned in the document. Can you break those down for me?
Sure. So there's like independent practice, there's primary group practice, and then the most, I guess you could say, unique one is cross-border group practice.
Cross-border, that's where it gets really interesting, globally speaking.
Yeah. And then there's this thing they call diaspora practice, which is specifically for African pathologists working abroad who want to serve their home countries.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, that's a direct way to address the brain drain issue we were talking about before.
Exactly. It's like TPN recognizes that there's all this talent and expertise out there, and they want to bring it back to where it's desperately needed.
Okay, but joining this network, especially for, cross-border work, it can't be as simple as just signing up online, right?
No, you're right. Patient safety is a huge deal, of course. So they've got this TPN Medical Governance Council, TMGC, they call it.
Okay.
And they have this really rigorous assessment process just to make sure that everyone meets their standards.
I was curious about that, actually. I mean, how do they handle all these different qualifications that pathologists might have from around the world?
So basically, the TMGC, they compare everything to, like, global standards.
Right.
So let's say you're a pathologist who's certified in France.
Okay.
They'll review all your credentials. And then, depending on what you want to do within the network, they might require maybe like a virtual skills test or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. You want to be confident that everyone on the network, meets a certain standard of care, regardless of where they come from.
Yeah, exactly. It protects the patients, it protects the pathologists, and it also protects TPN's reputation, too.
Okay, so we've got the assessment process down. But what about working together once you're actually in the network? The document talks about something called pathology practice groups.
Oh, yeah, the PPGs?
PPGs, right?
Yeah.
So what are those all about?
Well, imagine you've got this group of pathologists, right, from all different countries. They're all online, and they're discussing a really tough case, trying to, come up with the best diagnosis.
So like a virtual roundtable?
Yeah, exactly, like a virtual brain trust, almost.
Okay, and these groups are organized within the Spec 360 platform.
That's right. So they can be organized by country, by specialty, whatever makes sense for the case. It's all about sharing knowledge, learning from each other, and making sure that even the toughest cases get the benefit of multiple perspectives.
Okay, so we've talked about how pathologists get involved with TPN, the different levels of practice, and these really cool collaborative groups. But what about the future of this whole thing? I mean, the document mentions some pretty interesting possibilities, right?
Yeah, it does. One thing they're really focused on is continuous professional development.
Right, keeping everyone up to date on the latest advancements.
That's it. So they're looking at things like maybe new relicensing processes, ongoing training, and even incorporating new technologies like AI into diagnostics, for example.
Speaking of AI, the document mentions that it could potentially revolutionize pathology. What would that look like in practice, do you think?
Well, I mean, it has huge potential, right? Imagine AI helping to analyze images, flag potential problems, maybe even assist with diagnoses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think about all the possibilities. But of course, with any powerful new technology, there are always, questions about how sustainable it is, how it'll be funded, things like that,
And TPN actually addresses that head on in the document. They're really upfront about the costs involved.
which is good to see.
Yeah, they talk about, the cost for the pathologists themselves to participate, but also the cost of running the network as a whole.
Right, because we can't just focus on the technology without figuring out how to pay for it all.
And it's really interesting how they talk about potentially having, different pay scales based on location and the complexity of the case. They even give some specific figures in the document, which is really transparent.
Transparency is key, especially when you're dealing with something as global and complex as this. It
Yeah.
seems like they're really trying to find that balance, between fair compensation for the pathologist and making sure that the services are affordable for patients and healthcare systems.
Yeah, it's definitely a delicate balance, but it seems like they're approaching it with a lot of careful thought.
Okay, so we've talked about the financial side of things, but what about the legal considerations? I mean, operating in multiple countries must come with a whole host of legal challenges,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. They talk about data privacy, indemnity, even the process for leaving the network if a pathologist decides to do that.
So they're trying to think ahead and anticipate potential issues.
Yeah, it seems that way. And one thing that really stands out is their commitment to complying with all the relevant international regulations.
Right, because data privacy is a huge concern these days,
Right.
especially when you're dealing with sensitive medical information crossing borders.
Exactly. And I think that commitment to security and compliance is going to be really important for building trust with both the pathologists and the healthcare systems they're working with.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the potential benefits of TPN, but let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Are there any potential downsides or concerns that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to look at these things critically, right? One thing that comes to mind is the digital divide.
Right, because this whole system relies on having reliable internet access.
Exactly. And in some remote or underserved areas, that might be a real challenge.
The technology can only be as good as the infrastructure it relies on.
That's it. And then there are these broader questions about, how AI might impact the pathology profession as a whole. Like, are we going to see job displacement? Will there be an over-reliance on technology?
Right, at the expense of human expertise.
Exactly. It's something we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, we've touched on that a little bit already, but it's definitely worth exploring further. It does seem like TPN is trying to address some of these concerns with their emphasis uh, on collaboration or mentorship.
Yeah, those pathology practice groups, the PPGs, those could be a really good way to make sure that, that human connection and knowledge sharing remains at the heart of the network.
Exactly. So it's not just about the technology; it's about the people using it and the way they communicate with each other. They're really positioning it as an investment in their careers and the future of the network. They're not shying away from the fact that it might cost those pathologists something, like relicensing fees or training programs.
Yeah, I agree. It's like they're not just connecting pathologists, they're really investing in their growth and expertise.
Uh,
And that commitment to professional development is going to be crucial for making sure that the network, stays at the forefront of the field, especially as new technologies like AI emerge.
It's like they're creating this dynamic ecosystem where everyone benefits,
Yeah.
right? Pathologists get access to cutting edge technology, opportunities for growth, this global network of colleagues,
Yeah.
and patients, especially those in underserved regions, they get timely and accurate diagnoses from specialists they might not otherwise have access to.
It's a pretty compelling vision.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And this draft policy document gives us a really good look at how they're laying the groundwork for all of this.
It's exciting to think about what the future holds for TPN.
Absolutely.